Hello and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. This is your host, Jonathan Gelner, and thank you so much for joining us. This podcast is powered by Stick and Ball TV, the baseball and softball streaming platform. If you're a coach who's continuing to grow himself or herself every single week, then Stick and Ball is just for you. With videos updated weekly from some of the top baseball and softball coaches in the country, Stick and Ball is a no-brainer. Check it out at stickandball.tv or on the Stick and Ball TV mobile app. On today's show, we have on Trevor Flow, head baseball coach at North Hall High School in Gainesville, Georgia. Since he arrived at North Hall, he has been part of an overall record of 193 wins to 64 losses. In his first year as the head coach of the Trojans, they finished 24-7, made it to the Sweet 16. In year 2, they were 21-16 and made it to the Final Four. In year 3, their Trojans were 12-4 and ranked number 1 in 3A before the COVID-shortened season. And this past season, the Trojans won the AAA State Championship for the second time in school history and set the school record for wins in a season. Trevor earned Region Coach of the Year honors during the 2018 season and 3A Coach of the Year in 2019 and 2021. So on the show, we go over the vision of the program, how he stays on top of things by being extremely organized, and how to teach attention to detail. It is my pleasure to introduce Trevor Flow. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me, man.
Definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to getting to know you as well as the guests today, and we're looking forward to getting to just some insight within your program. And so one of the things that I really like to know is if we rewind back to, year one, I think it's intimidating for everyone, no matter if you've been a head coach for 10 years and you're changing programs or it's your first year as a head coach. There are always things that you look back and go, I did this pretty good and I would do this a little bit differently, but it's really just setting the foundation for what and how you want your program to be run. So I'd like to rewind to year one, or at least the months leading up to the school year in year one. What did that vision look like for you? And then what were some of the most critical things that you did?
Going in being a head coach, you have an idea of what you want it to look like. And I think for me, consistency was a huge deal for me. I wanted to be consistent in how we ran our program, and definitely in development and growth. So I wanted, of course, take a freshman or eighth grader, and you want to see them by the time they're juniors and seniors developing the player they want to be. So I don't think there's any replacing experience. So first year head coach, you have all these dreams and ideas about what you want your program to look like. And it's usually a lot harder off the field, the things you have to learn. So that consistency goes across the board, especially in high school baseball. You do a lot of things. So the consistency aspect for me was something that I wanted to have in place. I think that's the word that I would use.
Oh, I love it. And so let's rewind back again. I think again, consistency is such a big thing, just especially for teenagers. They're looking to us for guidance. And
right.
If we are wishy-washy with our behavior, it's just going to lead them to be confused or allow them for some allowance that is not based on the standards that we set. But what was the most critical thing that you did? So if we had to boil it down to, the head coaches listening that are about to go into year one, what was that foundation like? But if you had to boil it down to one thing, what do you think that would be besides consistency?
For me, you have this idea coming out of your playing days as a young guy. You have this idea of what you want to look like. And I think that very often it's easy to get put in a box about what you think the game looks like to you. And I would say one of the critical things for me in learning was how to be flexible with my viewpoints. So, this game is big and there's a lot of unbelievable coaches out there with unbelievable ideas. So if you come into this thinking, and it's just like a player, if you come in thinking that about the game, and you know how to coach the game, and you got this boxed idea about what you think it should look like because this is the way you've done it, then I think you're in for a rude awakening. And I did that a little bit when I first started coaching. I tried to be the coach that I was as a player. And I think that's a dangerous spot to be in. And I think a lot of young coaches or new coaches have that. So for me, being flexible and seeing other people's philosophies about, how they saw the game, how they conducted a game from a coach's standpoint, because coaching is not playing. You have to look at it objectively from, you got all these players, and like you just said, the teenager, and so much goes into that. Like, what player are you getting today? And how do you coach to their strengths? So those philosophies, I've really learned, I guess, not to be hard-headed, if you want to say that, to look outside the box and say, I might not have the answers, and that's okay. But there are a lot of people in this country and a lot of people coaching-wise that have done a really good job. And if you would be and I was stubborn not to reach out earlier on and say, I got some ideas. I'm not real sure how to put them in the program, but I see that you've been very successful. And I think doing that and being flexible, and you would find coaches that are more than willing to help you. I mean, I've met so many amazing people that I've stolen things from. I guess that's what we do as baseball coaches anyway, really. We borrow things. So I borrowed so many things from successful coaches and tried to interject those into what I do and my philosophy. And I think that's huge. That was very critical for me as a coach.
Really cool. So my wife and I, we've been going through some of Brian Kite's stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Brian, and you don't really have to be, but the latest thing that we actually went through. So he does these 20 different skills. And so the latest one was flexibility. And I was like, man, this is going to be terrible. Flexibility, wishy-washy. And the more that he really dug into it, because his biggest thing was we want to be disciplined in everything that we do. And discipline is the shortcut to where we want to be.
Right.
And so he talked about flexibility. He said, if you're not flexible, you're rigid, and rigid things break. And one of my favorite quotes that he used was, he said, being flexible, which is what you're talking about too. And this plays right into it because I love it. He said, it's being able to adjust your style to the people in your room without lowering your standards. And that one just like hit me with a ton of bricks because, we all have our own strengths, and we tend to play with those strengths and assume that the kids that are following us in that program have similar strengths, and a lot of them might, but there's so many different things that play into it. Just how they were raised and where they came from, what their life looks like on a daily basis. And so being able to adjust your style to reach everybody without lowering your standards, I thought that was really, really good.
Yeah, that's, and when we talk about a teenager and you're talking high school baseball, these kids, from the time they wake up in the morning, they're probably facing adversity and somehow, and then they go to school for 8 hours and they probably face adversity. If you're looking back on your school experience, it wasn't the best thing, and you got 4 million hormones going crazy, especially in these young men, and then they come down after that, and then you're trying to get in and practice and have them focus. So I think understanding the kid or the person you're working with was another critical issue for me. Just to be able to say, they've been through a lot. You have to look at it objectively from their standpoint as well. They've been through a lot throughout just a single school day. So how do you get the best out of them when they come to practice, and what do you look forward to for them in your program, and how do you do that? And I think if you're not thinking like that, you're not looking at a kid and saying there are so many things that probably happened to him or her throughout the day before they get to you, then you're probably missing the boat a little bit in understanding how that kid ticks.
Oh, for sure. So one of the things that when I sent the question list over, you actually filled it out, and I thought that this was great. So it's given me some different things to work on. But you said that you make a list. You're a planner by default, and you make a list every year of just
Right.
some of the things that you guys need to accomplish to be successful. And so baseball is very simple. When you play catch well, when you put the ball in play, when you're aggressive and you put
Right.
pressure on the other side, then you limit freebies, then you're going to be very successful. But what that looks like in every program is a little bit different. So with our program at Owasso, or with your program, we've got different kids from different parts of the country even. And so I would love to hear what have you found to be successful? Because again, you've been the state championship 4 times, you've won it twice. You've obviously found a recipe for success based on the teams that you've been able to mold. But I'd love to hear you just work through what is that formula for you guys, and then how are you implementing it?
You said a lot of it right there. I make a list, and it's a running list. It changes every year, and I think that's another part of being flexible. I think you have to know the kids that are in your program, and you have to coach to their strengths. So, but there are some things that we have to do well. Our throwing program is huge for us. We have to throw and we have to catch. Everybody has to throw and catch. But doing that in game-like situations or putting pressure on to compete before you get in actual competition arena is a big deal. So that's something we focus on daily. I mean, it's huge for us. Probably the most important thing that we do, and we spend 20 to 25 minutes a day, and I'm right there with them every single throw. And it's attention to detail. And I think that's a huge part of us being successful. And that list that I have includes, what are game-winning plays that we want to see when we get to when games really, really matter late in May. What are those game-winning plays? And I work back from there, and I make a list and say, these are the things we have to be really good at. And then you start looking at your personnel, and you start honing in on those things you're talking about. You have to play great defense. Well, how do you get a kid to play great defense? You can say we have to play good defense, and that's part of the game. But just saying it and then being able to actually execute it, how do we do that? So that's part of the list that I make as well. And then,
Sure.
and then what does it look like offensively for our team? How are we going to win baseball games? You can't just have a one size fits all. We had 3 home runs this year and won a state championship. 2 were in the playoffs. So we had 1 home run during the regular season and ended up winning a state championship. But I knew that going in from that list, that these are going to be our strengths. And one of those was not hitting the ball out of the ballpark. So how do we get 90 feet, and what does that look like? So there's a lot of critical elements to knowing your players and knowing your personnel, and actually putting that in to your development. I think that it's very easy to be generic, and I don't know. A lot of programs probably just they come out and they throw a little bit and they take some ground balls and they hit BP and they go home. And I personally, that kind of gives me anxiety a little bit, actually. I personally wouldn't feel like I was doing what I needed to do for these kids to be successful. And when you ask kids at the beginning of the season, you're sitting in this room, who wants to play college baseball? And 99% of them are going to raise their hand. Okay, well, whether that's a reality or not, it's my job. If that's something they want to do, it's my job to help them in the best position to get to where they want to be.
So one of the things that I think is interesting too, you've got that 99%, which hopefully they all do, and hopefully they all work to that. But we'll see. But they all have strengths and weaknesses within that too. So, and just to give an idea, you're a 3A school in a 7A classification, so right in the mid range. Right. I think you said you had 1,200 kids, and so you have to develop a lot of them. And I hope that most coaches would say the same thing. But you've got a lot of hands-on throughout the entire program. So I would love to hear your process of the player development system, and then like how do you help players to understand what they're good at, set goals, get better at? And then I'm struggling with this too a little bit. At Owasso, we've got almost 60 guys in off season, and it's a lot. Like, it's a lot. So putting a lot on them and understanding their strengths and weaknesses, but also taking into account that teenagers, they sometimes overestimate their strengths and undervalue their weaknesses, or the opposite. They think they suck all the time. So trying to be able to balance that too. But I'd love to hear your process on how do you help players to understand and communicate with what they're good at and what they're not.
Yeah, I believe in brutal honesty. There's a thin line between crushing a kid and being honest with a kid. And I saw something the other day, Monty Williams, about coaching up. Coaching kids or players up, coaching them to understand these are areas you're very good at, and these are weaknesses. And we always talk about, we need to strengthen our strengths, but we really, really need to make our weaknesses our strengths. And if we can do those two things, and we can focus on those, because I think it's easy for a high school kid to know that they have a weakness and to kind of use that as a crutch. And it allows them to say, I'm not very good at this. And that's a viewpoint in our program where I'm just not going to allow it. You're not very good at that now, but you will be. Okay. And that's what we need to really focus on. You will be good at this. It's something that obviously that needs, just like anything, it needs practice. It needs work. If you're not good at math and you don't do extra practice, you're never going to be good at math. So we take this program and say, all right, developmental wise, we start when they're in 8th grade, and my coaches are unbelievable. I mean, the work that they put in the off season, right after school, from August to January when we start officially. We don't stop, and they don't stop. And high school coaches don't get paid a lot, and my assistant coaches don't get paid nearly what they deserve. But they're there all the time, and the kids go full speed all the time. And I think success helps, obviously, when you're successful, and kids want to continue that, and you have a program in place. But I think that as coaches, it's critical that we have a renewing of our passion every year, and that's very difficult sometimes to say, okay, we're really successful. Like, we were really successful last year. So for me personally, I have to say, okay, that doesn't matter anymore. I'm so happy we were so successful, but now we have to figure out how to start over. And how do you, the ego is the enemy. And it is especially for high school kids. And I've thought about this since the day after we won the state championship. How do we go back to work in the drawing board and say, when you're on top, you're even more vulnerable. People want to knock you off even more. So we have to go back to work to be better than we were. And that development starts from the 8th grade. I want our kids, it's very critical to help them understand this is where you could be if you have this development like these kids in front of you. So the example that they set for each other is huge. And I can talk all day long, but if they're not doing it, and they're not going to our defensive work, we have an hour session, 4 groups every single day defensively. We're in the weight room every single day. They're doing their long toss program, their agilities, and their movement. So there's a ton of things that go in to development. But if you don't have kids that buy in, and you don't have leaders in the program, and I think that's a big part of knowing your kids and taking them to the side and saying, here's what I need from you, and challenging them. You take a kid to the side that wants to be really good, and you say, you have leadership qualities. These kids look up to you. I need you to help me. And you put that on them. A lot of kids are going to respond. And I think you have to do that if you want to be good. You have to give some ownership to the kids and let them lead, because if you just try to do it all yourself, and you never do that, you got robots walking around, and you're looking at some dangerous situations.
No doubt. Well, I'd love to hear you talk about giving ownership to the kids. What are like the standards that you set for them, whether it's you or whether it's team based? But I'd love for you to walk us through just your standards, your rules, and just your system of adhering to those on a daily basis.
Right. The classroom is non-negotiable. You have to perform in the classroom, and we do weekly grade checks, hold them accountable to that. I think it's very relatable to what you do on the field and who you are as a player by the way that you act in the classroom and the way you treat teachers. And I'm not talking about, you're not real good at a subject. I wasn't good at chemistry in high school, but I was still respectful and I still tried. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, if you don't bring anything to the classroom, I need to know that, because you're probably not going to be very successful in our program. And that's played out. If I'm being honest, kids that didn't really make it in our program weren't the best acting kid in the school. And it usually plays out like that. But, that's our first non-negotiable. Hustle, energy, effort, attitude, character. Being a great teammate, these are in no particular order, but being a great teammate, I harp on that daily. And one thing I say all the time is, you work to win a position. You go in to win your position, and you want to start. And if kids didn't want to do that, I would question them anyway. But what happens if you don't win that position? You're on this team. Are you a good enough teammate to cheer for that guy that's playing that won the position? And then are you going to go back to work? You learn a lot about a kid in that situation when they lose a position or they're not on the field. What kind of teammate are you? And I can honestly say some of my most memorable kids that have ever played in this program were the best teammates. They didn't particularly do amazing things on the field, but you could always count on them being great teammates. So that's a huge one for me, being respectful. I think all those are bricks that you have for your foundation, and laying those, I think they have to be laid early, especially in a program maybe that's been struggling. I was lucky enough when I took over this program, it was in a really, really good spot. So those things you build on, or you lay those foundations, and that goes back to consistency. You have to be consistent with those things. And you have to have those, and you cannot, and we talk about flexibility, you really can't be flexible with those things that are the foundation of your program. And that's tough love sometimes. I mean, I've had to make some really tough decisions, and you look at it, you got to look at it from a program standpoint. This is what our program is based on. This is our program. You kind of, as much as I'm about relationships and about kids and knowing the kid, there's a thin line between, and a lot of people say it, it only takes one to really have detriment to your program. So those are some tough decisions, but I think those are our non-negotiables in our program.
Sure. No, I think that's really good. And so I guess, one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about too, because again, you're a high school head coach. And so one of the added layers is the communication aspect of so many different levels of your program. And so I would just love to hear, like, how are you going on a daily basis about just making sure that's, because you've talked about communication, you've talked about being on the same page. I'd love to hear how you do that with just work through all parts of the program too, because I know parents will come up. I'm sure administrators will come up, bringing attention to the program with the players. All of those things are things that you'll have to tackle probably on a daily basis, but I'd love to hear how you're working through that.
Yeah, I think that the better communicator you are, it's easier to get ahead of issues. So, and I'll be completely honest, that's something that I've had to learn, how to be a great communicator, and not just when things come up, but how to communicate ahead. And, in high school, for high school coaches, and probably a lot of coaches do way more than me. But you have to handle so many aspects of the program, from, you just talked about dealing with administration, and you dealing with communicating about games, cancellations. Then we have an amazing booster club, but the communication has to be there for them, and all the things that go into our fundraising, our first meeting, tryout meetings, our second meeting, when they make the team, communicating with your assistant coaches. There's so much that you have to be good at and ahead of. And if you are, you can handle so many problems before they happen. Like, playing time, that conversation is not a big deal for us, or it hasn't been. I mean, knock on wood, but it hasn't been a big issue for us, because in our second meeting, I'm very blunt. I'm very transparent about the expectations, what is going to be there, what is not. And I think that when you do that, and you try to leave no stone unturned in your communication process, that you're making things easier for yourself. You're not eliminating by any means. I mean, there's always going to be something that comes up, but you being able to say, this is my vision for the program. These are the things that are important. This is what I see. Ahead of all that, then you're kind of answering questions before they arise. And I think that's huge. And that might be one of the biggest things that there is for a high school head coach, knowing how to communicate with all those different pieces that going in to make your program successful.
Really, really good. So one of the things that I really like hearing what other programs are doing too is their team building stuff. And I think that a lot of programs spend time together, but a lot of that time can be on a field, which can be good and bad. Obviously, we want to get to know them on a field. We want to help them get better baseball players, but there are opportunities outside of the baseball field to get to know them more on a personal level, get to impact them in that way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on team building activities. What are some of your favorites, and what are some that we can steal from you?
Something that we do team building wise is over Christmas break. There are 2 weeks over Christmas break. We do a Christmas challenge, and it's kind of culmination of everything that they've been doing in the weight room. And I put them on teams. We have a green team and we have a gray team. And we're going to do things. We throw our bullpens in the morning. We do our offensive work after, in our 4-on-1 groups. And then we go to our team challenges. And that usually consists of, I let them play games. I'll be honest, the volleyball games are the most intense. I mean, they buy in and go nuts. And the overall aspect is I want to see them compete. You learn a lot about kids in these challenges when they're forced to compete, and some people might be quote unquote weak link in certain areas. And how do they respond, and how do your team respond? And those team areas, like we'll play a volleyball game, and then we'll play a basketball game. We'll do some Navy SEAL like training activities, and then we'll hit the weight room. Last year we did a team rope challenge, and how long can you go at a certain speed on the battle rope before your next teammate takes over? And do you have something more in you that we haven't seen? And I'll be completely honest, I learned a lot about the kids and their mentality, especially the younger kids that I haven't gotten to see as many years. And I get to learn, this kid's got a little something more in him that I might not have known previously. And they love to compete, and it's an opportunity for them to stay in shape, but also we play for a prize, and the winning team gets the gear of their choice. And it's a big deal. And I have T-shirts made, and they come out and they compete like crazy. And last year we did a best out of 3 basketball series. And I mean, I videoed some of them. It's pretty. I mean, I didn't know we had such good basketball players on our baseball team. And I was kind of worried about basketball coach seeing them, but those things competing. Yeah, those things competing and just the competition. It doesn't have to be baseball. I learned as much about a kid in that volleyball game and laying out on the floor and arguing a call that I do on 4-on-1s when they're just, they're taking ground balls. And that puts that competition aspect. And I love it. I think it was very successful. And we did some challenges and some stamina things last year that, I was like, I might have to take this out later. It's a little bit crazy, but they responded, and it was really good. And I think that's the one thing that I like our team building more than anything is that Christmas challenge that we have.
Oh, that's great. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing in the off season. How do you plan it out? How many kids do you have? How much time do you have? And walk us through it if you don't mind.
Yeah, we start in August. Last year we started a year before school started, just because I'd been away from the game so long with COVID. I was going insane. But we start in August, usually the second week of August, and August through November is going to consist of our defense, slight offense mechanics. Then we're going to be in the weight room full time. I think the strength is a huge deal. Too many people don't understand how important the weight room is. So we're going to be in the weight room. We're going to be doing a lot of baseball focused strength workouts. We're going to be doing agility workouts, our hinge movements, really focusing on kids being able to move and their movements, and our long toss, all that strength and getting ready, getting the body ready to perform is what we will do. Now, August through November is focused mainly on defense, and our objective is infielders get 100+ ground balls a day in 4-on-1s. Outfielders get 75 plus fly balls in our 4-on-1 period, and they usually go 3 to 4 times a week in that capacity. But long tosses are 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week, and then the weight rooms every day, and we do everything from jump ropes to all of our drill aspect with tennis balls and things like that. So it's a lot. I ask a lot of them, and it's full speed. And then November through January, we're going to really concentrate on getting our arm ready, pitchers especially getting our arm ready to perform. My goal is that when they step on the field, January 17th, that they'll be 60 pitch ready to go. All pitchers are up to 60 pitches, and so that when we hit the ground in January, we're not starting just to practice. We're not just going out there, and I need it to be as full speed, as close to they could actually play a game as they can. So the weight room goes all the way through August through January, and then agility is the same, but we kind of switch to go bullpen and offense from November to January, and then defense is from August to November.
Oh, very cool. And how many players do you guys usually have in the offseason, and coaches?
It's usually our whole coaching staff, so 5 or 6 of us, and we'll rotate off, giving each other a break. And I try to be here 4 to 5 days a week just to see, because I want to be around the guys. But we have, I want to say 40 plus kids. They're going to be doing that, and this year I will implement middle school workout. There are no restriction numbers for us for middle schoolers, so I'm going to bring in the middle schoolers 1 day a week to get field time and start introducing our concepts and how we do things and our terminology, and hopefully they grasp a little bit of that before they get into the program. 6th and 7th graders play middle school, so I don't really get to see them, and I would like to know them ahead of time. So I think that has a possibility to be very beneficial for us.
So when we transition from the off season, which, like you said, November, December, you do the Christmas challenge. You guys come back from Christmas break in January, and then you start preseason mode. So I'd love to hear how have you felt like you I guess, how best have you felt like you've prepared these guys? What have you felt? You said you got to get them up to 60 pitches on the mound, but just as far as like mindset, and as far as, you talked a little bit about installing mechanics in the fall, and then getting, once the season starts, I'm assuming that you don't have a whole lot of time for that. And so
Right.
I'm assuming that that's like part of your foundation process. But what does that transition look like from off season to preseason to in season? What are you cutting out, and what are you making more important?
I look at it from an offense defense standpoint. So we have these two buckets, offense and defense. That's easy to say. You got offense, you're hitting, and defense, you're fielding and throwing. But there's so many critical aspects that go into these two buckets. So what big things can we get offensively, and what big things defensively in the preseason, so that when we get into season and we start really focusing on more of the team aspect, our preseason individual preparation. We're trying to make you the best possible individual player that you can, because we can only do 4-on-1 in our preseason. So we can work only with 4 players at a time, unless we're doing like the workout aspect. So if we're doing baseball specific, we're only dealing with 4 players at a time. So I'm trying to make the best individual player growth and development that we can in that preseason workout time. So when we get to season, now here we come together. So we're putting these pieces together to what it would look like to win a baseball game. So you got this development aspect, and let's make them the best possible individual player that they can be, and see growth and help them feel good about it. And then we're going to get in this team aspect to when we start introducing the little things that are going to win us baseball games. So all those individuals come together. So I would say just the time that we spend as far as the amount of ground ball work, or the amount of individual outfield work. And of course, our bullpen sessions have to be fit in to a practice schedule. So those things start to look more like a team concept. So you get your ground ball work within the team concept when we're doing our specialty by position work, and really focusing on how this comes together to look like winning a baseball game. So and I guess you can liken that to building a foundation as well. You take the individual and you build them and develop them as best as you can. And then now let's put this house together, and let's see if it stands and if it works.
Oh, really good. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, and this is something that I think that I've been trying to do a better job of. And that's, you mentioned in the outline that you sent me, was your attention to detail. And I like to think of, like, how do we steal reps? So we all have the same period of time with players. How do we do, attention to detail as well? But how do we also steal extra reps that are going to build up through the season? And one of the things that you mentioned was your ability to play catch really well and in game-like situations. And I'd love for you to go more in depth with that. But I'd also like to hear, are there any other ways that you have found your ability to do that? Because again, it's we all have the same period of time. We all have different players, but the time is equal for most programs in the country. Now, how do we maximize that with attention to detail and with stealing reps?
Right. Well, when they cross the white lines, it's known that that's our time at full speed. And I think Gino Ariema says, I'm not here to coach your energy and your effort. And if we have to do that, we're in a bad spot. So I like that a lot. And I tell them often, I'm not here to coach you going full speed. If you want to play in this program, that's a given. You need to go full speed. And I think that as the head coach, it's my job to focus on that. And that's where, you kind of become, I don't know if you want to say the bad guy or whatever, but you can't be scared to call out players for not going full speed, because if you don't, it will cost you a baseball game. It will. And that's why, I stand and walk through the players when we do our catch routine, our throwing routine, and if they're not moving their feet, or if they're not in an athletic position, or if they don't have great arm speed and they're working their body together. And I'm going to tell them about that, because that's going to lose us a baseball game. That is our opportunity. I want to say it's something like 65-70% of high school errors are throwing errors. So why would we not pay the most amount of detail and attention to something that usually loses people baseball games? So when they get on the line after our stretching routine and after we go through our agilities and mobility, we're going to go straight. Well, we execute, and then we go straight to our throwing routine, and it is attention to detail. And I want them to work up a good sweat. And when they get to 90 feet, before they air it out, if it's a day we're stretching it out, I want them to have game hands and game feet and game actions. And if they're not doing those things, then we're not getting better. And I think you can talk to any scout or any college coach that goes and watches any tournament, and they can tell an athlete or a player by the way they're throwing, the way they're warming up, and their attention to detail. So we have to be really good at that and eliminate errors before we step on the field. And that's an opportunity there to have a game rep, to eliminate something that could happen later by your attention to detail from the time you step on the field. And I would like to think that our focus and our pace and our energy, our execution, the way that we teach leads to those kids knowing our expectations and why we're doing it. I think you always have to tell them why. That's what teaching is, right? So for teaching this game, here's why we're going to execute at this speed. And the younger kids might not know the extent that I'm asking them to do it. And that's where your kids, your older kids, lead by example. But if they're not doing it, don't expect your younger kids to do it, because that's the example that's being set. You can talk all day, but those game reps, when you're not actually in practice, I think win or lose baseball games. And it's huge. It's huge for us. I think we do a really good job throwing and catching, and we have traditionally, because of the time that we spend on that. And I think that, we talk a lot about don't beat yourself. Well, that aspect, those 15, 25 minutes of practice, that aspect helps us not beat ourselves. And it has to be that attention to detail.
Oh, that's great. So let's flash forward to you're starting the season. I'd love to just, best in the best way that you can. And this is very, context dependent on what time of the year that you're in. But let's just say you're in the middle of the season. I'd love to hear, what your thoughts are on how do we organize practice most efficiently. So you've been able to do this for the last couple of years, which, obviously you've had some real success. But what do you guys really put a focus on? And even a better question is, what would it look like? What would it feel like? And what would it sound like if we came and watched you practice?
Yeah. Normally we open up practice with some sort of execution. I think that high school baseball, you have to be really good at that. You're not dealing with, in college, you're dealing with 25 plus of the best players that played on their high school team. So, in high school, the talent pool is not like that. So you have to get the most out of your execution periods as possible. So we do a lot of, I have 2 fungo men and 4 hack attacks. So I use those every day. So we'll go, sometimes we'll do 4 corner execution, and we have a turf field, which is a huge blessing. So at all 4 bases, we're doing some sort of execution, whether it's push bunt, whether it's sac bunts with a runner on first, sac bunt with a runner on second, drag bunts. And then normally I'll go straight from there to base running execution session where we'll do, our slash, our hit and runs, while I'm giving the base runners context clues on what they're doing. So, if you want to be honest, I think base running and throwing are the 2 areas that lose the most baseball games, and probably the 2 areas that aren't coached enough. So during that time at the beginning of practice, when we're focused and we're fresh, we're working on, mental second, reading the ball, getting where do my hips turn, or do I read the ball behind me? Do I advance? Do I not? And those are live. There's a coach at every bag, and they're coaching as hard as they possibly can. That is the most important station for them. The guys on third, I'm giving them context clues, infield in, infield back. What's that look like? How many outs? We're going here on this situation. If there's runner on first, we're staying out double play, make them make a play at the plate. And that played huge dividends for us in the playoffs. Seeing and being able to read and all those reps that went into it. And the guy on first, where do we get on a fly ball? How far do we go out depending on where it's hit to what part of the field, and advancement. And those things are huge. And we do all that within our first 30 to 45 minutes practice before we even go to any kind of throwing routine. And it plays huge dividends for us. And then we'll go straight to our throwing routine normally. And then we're straight into it. We go to an execution as far as our position specific groups. And I'm a firm believer in not just doing something because you're on the baseball field and it's been done for hundreds of years. So and this goes back to my planning and probably over planning, and how do you find situations that are plays directly into a baseball game? And that's where I'm going to develop the practice plan on. And our coaches are, once again, unbelievable. And I should probably stop right there and say, if you don't have a great coaching staff, this sounds overwhelming. And it's kind of overwhelming when you do have a great coaching staff. But if you don't have one, and I'm more than blessed to have guys that are loyal and are bought into the system and that coach their absolute tails off and they're really good at it. They get out here and they lead, and we're going to find ways that are directly related to game situations, and we're going to put those into the practice situation, and we're going to go full speed. And they know they're allowed to make mistakes and not be perfect. That's part of it. You have to learn how to be good doing it the way you would do it in a game in order to execute in a game. If I take 25 ground balls at 75% and my feet aren't moving, the game speeds up on you. So how do we eliminate the game speeding up on us for those little things? And I would hope that's what you would see in practice. And, new people, new parents, they come into our program that watch practice are all the time like, I had no idea what's going on. It's like ultimate chaos out there. And I'm like, good. I need it to look like chaos because they're learning to go full speed and figure it out, and I think that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. So, you mentioned wanting to get as many game-like reps of things that happen in a game as possible. What are some ways that you guys do that, or ways that you found that you've been able to rep that within the context of practice?
And this is something that I really had to work on, not being generic at practice. So, I look at the percentages of plays in a game and go through as much information of coaches that have already done this before me and see what plays happen throughout the game. And we watch film throughout the regular season and past seasons and kind of jot down, this play happens way more than this play. So we got to be really good at that. And, the backhand play, the intermediate backhand play for the shortstop. We can't sit back on that ball. If you watch game after game after game of high school, there are so many infield base hits that are intermediate backhand to the shortstop. So we got to be good at that. I need you to be able to read the first hop off the bat and see that and go get it. So those are things that have taken experience and live log those things. And these percentages are what plays in a game. These are the things that we have to be really good at. Game plays in order to win. So that's what more geared towards the practice schedule. Now, I'm not saying we don't do fundamental things like field off left, throw off right. Young kids have to know that, So we during our position specific, we might work on slow rollers and break it down to get on your left foot, catch, throw off your right. And we do those little things, but I try everything that we're going to do. I try to relate to a game situation, and hopefully that's helped us be successful.
No, I really like that a lot, and I think sometimes I think we can overanalyze with that, and I think one of the most simple things, and you even mentioned that, which the awesomeness comes out of the simplicity of this, is just giving them the game situation. And so I think, with the 30-plus-year-olds, we were inundated with the baseball terms of, hey, we've got this count and we need to do this with a baseball.
Right.
These kids aren't as much. This is more of a and for a lot of good reasons. There's been a lot of approach on how do we get them bigger, stronger, faster. But at the same time, the tactical side is missing, I think, from a lot of these kids. So they may have a lot more physicality, but getting them to think about game situations as much as possible, with even just adding a count, adding runners, adding how many outs, the inning that it is, and just making them work through that right before they're doing something. Now you take, something as simple as first and third, and they go from autopilot to, oh, okay, so this run doesn't actually matter. Let me just get an out. Or, oh, that's the winning run. Now this leads to a different importance. And you can do that with whatever it is, but just adding those different game scenarios, I think that's a really, it's just something that's simple. That's just adding a count to what we're doing in the cages every single day.
100%.
Okay, it's a 2-strike count or it's not. And, making it could be simple as that. Or you've got base runners here. Here's what the pitcher's been throwing all day. Here's what we're going over, and just giving them that added element to once they get into a game, they'll be like, oh, I did this in the cages on Tuesday. Not a big deal. I love that. So one of the next things that I really wanted to dig into, preparing teams for the postseason, and you hear a lot of coaches that say that they scale back on some things and they stick to the fundamentals, and they want to save legs or they cut back on time. And it's such a, you've got to know your team, and you've been there, you've done that, and you've been successful with it. So I would love to hear what your thoughts on just how, once you start to see the postseasons coming, a week, 2 weeks, month, whatever, you're getting down to those final few weeks of the season. What are some different things that you do to really prepare those guys for a deep run in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that the regular season it plays as much for us as anything. I have a list of these things win or lose games in the postseason, and things that I've seen throughout the years and that have played huge roles in the postseason. And we have a list of those things, and I'm marking those down. I carry a sheet with me in my back pocket every single game, and I write down in this specific column. I write down this will help us be successful for a deep run, or this will lose us a deep run, and I bring those things to their attention, and I'm very upright and honest with them about this will lose you a baseball game. If we have a runner on third and less than 2 outs in a playoff game, your focus has to be different. So why wouldn't it be different during the regular season? And I try to coach as much of the regular season like I would of the postseason, so that, nerves and adrenaline, the game speeds up on a lot of people in the postseason. So I think you have to be conscious about coaching the regular season kind of like you would the postseason, but obviously you're not there and you're going to make a lot more mistakes. And I use the illustration this year, like you're walking on a high wire. That wire gets a lot higher when you get into May, and mistakes during regular season might not kill you, but if you fall off that thing deep when it's really, really high, deep in the playoffs, you might not recover. So those things throughout the regular season, everything has to be on purpose. I think everything you do has to gear towards the postseason. I don't think any coach just goes into the regular season and says, let's just see what happens. If they do, you're probably not putting your team in a great situation. But I think that the first day, it has to be talked about. Our goal is to make the postseason. And we have to do these things successful. And then every single game, every single practice, you have to focus on those things. And you might not say it directly, but I do use the illustration in the game a lot. If I had to be critical of myself, and I am often, but one thing I think that after wins, I might be a little too critical about things I saw during the game that are not going to help us be successful in the postseason. And hopefully the kids know why I'm doing it and why I harp on those things. But I do bring those things out, especially after a game when we meet and I go over the list. Here's the things I saw. Of course, here are the positive things I saw. It's not all negative. You can never be all negative. Here are the game-winning things that you did that will win you a postseason game. Was our strike percentage where it should have been? Did we stay out of full counts? Did we stay out of 3-ball counts? I do all those things and keep a chart of those things, and our assistant coaches keep charts of those things that are postseason winning plays, and they need to know. So when we get to a 3-game series, a pitcher gets on the mound, he knows he's got to let his defense play, and he stays in the game. You know, I can take you out during the regular season and put another pitcher in, and it might not be as critical, but if you don't do those things early in the game, and you don't throw strikes and you don't stay out of those 3-ball counts, and we don't limit our pitch counts, and you don't let the defensive play and have those hinge moments and swings, all those things that go into being successful, I think starts throughout the entire regular season to prepare you. And I try to schedule as many dominant arms as I can because pitching is the way it is. I mean, the baseball talent in this country is unbelievable. So if you get to the playoffs, you get a state championship, you're facing 90. I mean, every single time. I mean, it's legit. You're going to face 90 miles an hour. So you have to be good at it. So why would you not try to face as many of those in the regular season as possible?
Sure. No, I really like that. And I do have some quick hitters before you go. So again, let me be the first to say, Trevor, I appreciate your time and your willingness to come on and do this and share so much of what you guys are doing. But I want to get to know you a little bit better. So what is something that you're starting to dig into or learn about or have learned lately that has gotten you really excited?
Man, I'm a science guy when it comes to the way the body operates. So the kinetic chain of energy, and how it relates to the way that we move on defense and the way that we run and the way that it works to prepare us to have the best success at the plate hitting and how the body really works. I think that a lot of kids are visual learners and they need to know how this works together, what it looks like. So if I say hit off a firm front side, why are we doing that? So the kinetic chain of energy is something I've dug into, and I got a really good PowerPoint from the Dodger system that really shows that. So I show that to the kids, and we focus, and it's more me, I guess. I love to learn. So I'm saying, and they probably think I'm crazy because I get so excited about it, but look at how the body works together to help you be the most efficient that you can. And you say, Coach, I want to hit for more power. Well, let me show you what this actually looks like. And then, I want to throw with more velocity. Well, let me show you what this actually looks like. And, of course, everybody's different for high school kids. So just trying them to understand the simplicity of how it works really. And when you let it happen, that's been a huge thing for me. And I love learning about those things and trying to help them understand, and once again, give them the why to why they're doing it and how to be more successful.
Oh, great answer. What is something that you either used to believe that you don't anymore, or have stopped doing lately that again, you found more information on and you have decided to go a different direction, and why?
I think it's my preparation. Like I said earlier, I feel like I was really generic early on as a coach, and working backwards from the playoffs and the game situations, and spending more time and not being as generic. So like, I just give you an example on our field and most high school fields. We don't necessarily need to work the double cut. So used to be, I would take 25 minutes out of practice and say, here's where you're supposed to be. Look how close you're supposed to be. But we still teach it, but I don't hit on it nearly as much. So it opens up times for those percentages of other game-winning plays for us to practice that you see a lot more. So not saying we wouldn't talk about double cuts if we ever played on the field, like in the state playoffs. We played in the state championship. We played on Gwinnett Stripers field, a major league field. So obviously we needed the double cut, and we reviewed that and went over it. But those things not being generic, I think, is a huge part of me learning how to coach and continue that growth mindset of how do I get better to put our team in a better situation to win.
Oh, I love it. What is your player's favorite drill or drill set, or just anything that if you brought it to the table tomorrow, your players would love it because you're like, this is a winner for us. So, and let us steal it from you.
Oh man, the Fungo Man comes into play here. We do something called 10 on 10, and it goes fly ball. So we'll work areas that are difficult fly ball areas, and like the third baseman getting towards the rail or getting into the triangle, or the first baseman getting towards the dugout and or the netting. And what I'll do is I'll take it up, and they'll challenge each other. And finally, we'll have that thing on 10, the Fungo Man on 10, which is basically a 10-second hang time. And it's really scary for me, actually, because some of the younger players, I actually don't let them do this because I mean, that thing coming down if they haven't done it a lot. But my older guys, they love it. They compete. They talk trash to each other, and they make some incredible catches. So, if we get out here in the evening and I got the lights on and that thing disappears on a 10-second hang time, and if they join the 10 on 10 club, if they can make 10 consecutive catches with the Fungo Man on 10, and it really challenges their concentration and being able to track fly balls. And and when they see that so many times, it's really amazing how good they get at it. And I'll be completely honest, I'm not going to try it because it's so. But we had a kid last year that tracked one and came down, and actually he tripped right before, and it hit his finger, and the bone came out of this middle finger. But he ended up being the game-winning pitcher in Game 3 of state championship. So he came back fine. But that's what I'm talking about, dangerous-wise. But they love doing that stuff and competing, and it makes a regular fly ball in the season just look like a cupcake.
Well, I can imagine. Last question for you is what resources would you recommend any coaches out there who are looking to grow themselves? Could be books, courses, people, all of the above.
I just got through reading a couple books. I read The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, and then Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. About to start Good to Great by Jim Collins. Of course, Legacy by James Kerr are some of my favorites. So I would think if you want to coach and be able to talk about, overcoming adversity and how to change your mindset, The Obstacle is the Way was a really good one for me. I just finished that last week. So, of course, podcast and listening to other coaches and reaching out to those guys that have been successful. My mentor, Trent Mongeiro is a guy that I still keep in contact with and you lean on. And I think experience teaches you that you don't know the game as much, so you need as much of the information as possible. And like this podcast, I've listened to legendary coaches on this podcast and things that are done and Stick and Ball TV and as much as you possibly can. And I reach out to coaches like Butch Chaffin and Chuck Box and those guys that have been really successful that I want to know more from, and I ask questions because I think becoming vulnerable is a big deal for a coach. You can't act like you know it. I want to be the dumbest person in the room when we go places and learn. So I think that's a big deal. At coaches, there are a ton of resources for you if you want to get better.
Well, Trevor, man, I appreciate your time. I love getting to spend the day with you and getting to hear all of the different cool things that you guys are doing. But I did want to give you the opportunity to talk to our guests before you go. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before you head out?
No, you can, if you want to know more about our program, of course, trojansbaseball.com. And you can look me up at Coach Flow, at Trevor Flow on Twitter, or email me. And, I would love to hear from you guys and the way that other people do things. And if you have something that's a huge resource for you, I'd love to know. And just reach out, and anything that I can be helpful with or that you have, I would love to hear it. So, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for what you do for the game and helping coaches get better. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Ahead of the Curve. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, which could include Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please share it on social media to help get the word out. Once again, thank you for joining us.